another episode of the Best Book Club. I'm your host, NeufAtora, and this is the podcast where I discuss the best stories with the best minds in the community. On this episode, I'll be discussing the entirety of New Life this time with the writer ChaosReacon. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So this was you first posted this on DeviantArt and Lucky Fetish on September 25th, 2022, and it tells the story of a woman coming to terms with her newfound affliction, attempting the impossible task of holding the rapidly disintegrating aspects of her life together. And so you were on way back on episode 23 where we talked about just the first two chapters. And so how does it feel to
Mm.
be on the other side of this thing now?
It it feels nice being able to finally have or just having a series done, or at least the original idea for it.
Mhm. Okay, yeah. So, and it seems like it appears to be like you originally planned for 10 chapters, and then it expanded to
Mm.
12, and then as I was reading this for this episode, I found out that you expanded it to 13. So, how like what was the original inception of that idea? What did it look like originally, and why did you decide to expand it?
Part of it was explained in the behind the series that I released shortly after completing chapter 13, but with the original 10 chapter idea, the ending was meant to just be a jumping board off into potentially being a character in a Vampire the Masquerade game.
Okay.
And we can definitely go more into that, like if we talk about the chapters themselves and such.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it changed uh, just because a lot more ideas came about while writing some of the chapters, and then just changing how that original ending was gonna be.
Oh, so you had an entirely different ending planned. Wow. Okay. And
Mm.
I was actually going to ask about Vampire the Masquerade because I saw that you titled some of them as a wedgie VTM story, and I wasn't entirely sure what VTM was, and it came up as Vampire the Masquerade, and it definitely like openly saying things like World of Darkness and things like that. I don't really have any experience whatsoever with that game, but I've heard the name before. So
Mm.
would you like to talk about like why is that why was that one of the kind of main draws or inspirations for this story?
Well, part of the main draw at first was because there was an offer for me to be part of Vampire the Masquerade game. And so, even though I wasn't part of the game, after looking through the fifth edition Vampire book, the ideas kept coming, and I just kept going through what was available for fifth edition, and even branching out to the older editions and the other game lines that are underneath the World of Darkness.
Hmm. Okay. And so
Especially um, where it really has that strong sense of it being real, but just having a very gothic horror aspect
yeah.
to the mundanity of our real life, that secret world part of things.
Hmm. Is it just vampires, or are there other occult creatures there?
So with World of Darkness, it originally started off with Vampire the Masquerade, even though there was another game line that was supposed to come out before Vampire, but it eventually spread out to Werewolf the Apocalypse, Mage the Ascension, which now adding that, it's like, okay, why is that part of World of Darkness? And just more so, just uh, that was what are the rules for operating magic? do you stick to just doing light stuff, or do you do reality breaking things that reality claps back?
Okay.
And just how dark that nature can become.
Uh-huh.
But those are just the three main game lines. You then have Wraith the Oblivion just exploring the afterlife of your character's already dead. And thus it's exploring the afterlife and all that kind of stuff. You got Changeling the Dreaming, so playing around with fey creatures and such.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Hunter the Reckoning, which now, well, outside of some of the supplements, now it's you're playing a human that's been blessed to now take on different monsters. So think supernatural.
Okay. Are you talking about the TV show?
Yeah, yeah, the
Oh,
TV show.
I've also never
Just because
seen
that's kind of
Supernatural. So that's not.
that's perfectly fine, but it's essentially a game line that's essentially uh the reckoning is coming. The humans are fighting back against this world of darkness. Not
Okay.
necessarily you're literally fighting the different denizens that's Vampire the Masquerade and such, but you're now the humans fighting back.
Okay.
And then you have Demon the Fallen and Mummy the Resurrection to help complete the mainline games.
I'm. I kind
And
of.
at this point, I'm just stopping there just because it can go a lot more deeper than that.
The mummy one sounds a little funny to me. Just a bunch of people shuffling around wrapped in bandages. Uh. So
It
are
plays more into you are reborn,
okay. So just like
or
a
just how the mummification that your body is preserved, and thus
okay.
you are reawakened
Okay.
into the modern day setting.
Yeah. Have you seen Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness?
Yes.
Is it kind of like the Zombie Strange,
Uh in terms of like World of Darkness and that kind of stuff, or
like the mummies? Are they like that? Like they're preserved, like, or they're
mm,
just they look like normal people?
they more so look like normal people, unless you
Okay.
want to play the zombie type person. But you
Okay.
got other game lines that work more better for something like that.
Okay. Are these all happening in the same universe?
That is completely up to the storyteller to
Ah.
include
Okay.
what they want in their games. They can all
Okay.
be played separately, or you can bring them all together, which the earlier editions definitely had some aspect where you tied them in together.
Okay.
Some of the product lines crossed over with each other and such.
Yeah, it sounds like it's perfect for that.
Mm.
Whatever. I forgot what I was about to say. Whatever. Um, so I was waiting for New Life to be completely finished after reading the first two chapters, but because we're in the same Discord server, I was still seeing the art you made as the story progressed. Like I was avoiding reading the rest of the story because I wanted to save it for when the thing was done, so we could talk about it fully. But I
Mm.
still saw those pieces of art. And so finally finding out how those moments and story beats play out was really nice. It was like a puzzle
Mm.
finally being put into place.
When the illustration gives representation of what could be happening,
Yeah.
and then you finally read the stories that accompany them.
Yeah, it could be a spoiler, but there's really not any context for what's happening, so didn't
Mm-hmm.
really spoil any. It was seemed more so like it was capturing yeah, it was capturing what like physically was happening, but it seemed more so it was more about like getting the emotions into a visual
Mm-hmm.
medium.
That was definitely the goal behind it. To what helped summarize the chapter with some spoilers here and there.
Yeah. I mean, really, I think thinking back on like all the art that you did, the only one I can really think of as being a spoiler is Joshi being a vampire, being shown as a vampire. But like that happens at the second chapter, so it's not really a spoiler. Yeah, anything else just
Mm-hmm.
the pieces are so it's not like you can really look at the art and understand what happens in the story. They're absolutely they
Mhm,
are the condiment to this entree, um, so to
mhm.
speak.
Where it's definitely, if you just look at the illustrations themselves, you get kind of a story to it, but it's disjointed where you're not fully sure what happened
Yeah.
between each of the illustrations.
Yeah, it's like the memories that you retain from a dream. You just only remember the tiniest little scattered bits,
Mhm.
but not the whole picture. So it doesn't quite make sense yet.
And then of course you have chapter 6 where unfortunately I was running out of time and thus couldn't get the illustration taken care of for that one.
Yeah, but that's all right.
Mm.
It
Yeah, the rough draft just wasn't coming together, and I just really wanted to release the chapter, so
yeah,
maybe I'll go back and finish it.
yeah. I don't see why you couldn't put it into like a
Mm.
PDF and as the comprehensive tome of all of new life, all the art and yeah, you could make those pictures as sort of like the chapter, whatever you call them. I've never known what those little pictures at like the start of a chapter are in a book like Harry Potter. Like those little illustrations. I've
Mm,
never understood. I never know what they're called, but they could be like that.
it could be just uh, an illustration summary of the chapter, but otherwise I would just call them just illustrations that
Yeah,
have something to do with the chapter.
I guess like chapter illustrations, something like that. I'm not sure. But anyway, something that I brought up in our initial discussion is the way you show Joshi experimenting with the limits of her newfound vampirism. Vampires have had
Mhm,
media exposure for decades, and there are all kinds of supposed weaknesses. And I really
mhm,
like that you actually address these rather than just ignoring them and doing your own thing. It helps maintain a
mhm,
level of realism that's almost necessary for readers to care about human characters in any story.
mhm. Especially with this kind of story where I wanted to feel real. I wanted, what would, if someone just turned into a vampire, they had no guidance, how would they go about trying to figure out what they can and can't do?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
was a big reason why I didn't include the Vampire the Masquerade subtitle until chapter 12.
Mm.
Just because I want to give that air of mystery where if you're familiar with the material, you would understand it more quickly. But otherwise, just coming from just someone newly risen, just would it make sense to them, even
Yeah.
if they had Vampire the Masquerade terms thrown at them.
Yeah. Well, and I for the up until chapter 12 really, there's nothing really unique to Vampire the Masquerade that comes into the story. It's only really at chapter 12. And I got to be honest, that was kind of the chapter that threw me off quite a bit is hard for me to get through because of uh, all the all the lore, but
Explanation.
we'll get to that when we get to that. Um, yeah, it's it helps tie the story to this this world. I mean, being as real as you can
Mhm,
while having vampires and blood magic and things like that also existing. So it's a
mhm.
bit of a balance, but it works very well.
Thank you.
Chaos is mentioned multiple times throughout the story, and it took me a while to not automatically think Chow from Sonic as soon as I saw the name. Uh, is Chaos the real name of Chitoru's brother, or is that a stage name for his band?
Yes. Uh, for those who read Chataro's Alchemy Trials, yes, Chataru and Chaos Yoshimitsu are twins.
Right. Yeah. Actually, that's something I'd also like to talk about is how much of the characterization from your other works carried over to new life because, as we discussed in the previous episode, this is an alternate timeline.
Mhm.
So is
Imagination, just how would those characters fit into this world? Some of them don't, some of them do.
yeah. So are these like entirely fresh Chatoru and Joshi, or is it there's like a certain point in that other timeline where it splits and then new life comes into play uh, alongside something else?
It's completely divergent, where you can just read one or the other, and they're uh, two separate lives,
Yeah.
and just how they ended up dealing with certain
Okay.
events.
Okay.
Uh, a big example with Chatoru's alchemy trials. Originally, Chaos and Chatoru were originally separated from each other at the age of 5. That did not happen in New Life, and so that's like one of the big differences is different events happen, and therefore, um, New Life Chatoru led a mostly normal life
Hmm.
compared to how she had her life in Chatoru's alchemy trials.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I'm glad you confirmed that because that is how I was viewing the
Mm-hmm.
story was as entirely separate characters as opposed to any sort of
Mm-hmm.
carryover. That's good. Um, so and there's stuff there that I want to get into a little bit later, as we get towards the end of the story. But aside from the song "The Moonlight Couple," which comes, I actually can't remember if Hans and
Mm-hmm.
Shadow wrote it or they just used it for Flame Over Darkness, but
If I recall correctly, yes, they did write it.
I think they did. Uh,
Mhm.
so aside from that song, did you write any of the music that Joshi performs or any of the music that comes up in the story?
I wish there were just more songs that helped
Mm,
uh flesh out just what Joshi's style was with her band, Mark of the Black Swordsman. But otherwise, it's not outside of the realm of possibility that bands do covers, especially when they just start out and they need to fill out
oh yeah,
um, their performances. Obviously, you're not being paid just to be a cover band unless you're specifically being hired for that purpose.
yeah. Okay,
But otherwise, I try to add in just kind of who the bands were and such
yeah.
when
Okay,
including them.
okay. Yeah, that's all right. Well, so you kind of it's just kind of music that was inspiring you or driving the story, kind of the
Mm-hmm.
music that helped capture it. Yeah, that's what I did as well with the fortunate events. So that's
Mm-hmm.
nice. I like seeing that. It's like a soundtrack to the story. You're scoring your writing, which it makes it more cinematic in my mind and it's more enjoyable. It's
Mm-hmm.
more of an all encompassing experience as opposed to just reading.
Yeah, exactly. Which I did include kind of like the full playlist kind of for the series in my behind the series thing that I wrote for it, just including all the different song references that I included throughout the series.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, so if anybody wants to check that out, uh, I'll along with the link to the story, I'll also link to the behind the series post as well.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody who's interested can check that out. And I think it's really cool that people are starting to do that. You and Shadow so far I've seen have done that. It is especially for like this kind of thing. Like I definitely enjoy seeing. Yeah, I actually forgot. I remember you posted that, and then I forgot about it until just until you brought it up now. So I wish I'd remembered before, so I could have read that and got more info. That's okay.
I was wondering if I should have brought it up or not.
Yeah, you should have.
Which, in the same vein, it would have also been nice because now there's something else uh, for people to check out to get a little bit more information.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Just
otherwise, we just might have to do another episode, maybe
uh,
one day, if it
yeah,
ever comes up.
yeah. Well, so I really like Joshi's fake sneeze from chapter 12. It is an extremely tiny detail, but it is it provides a
Oh,
wealth of
sorry, you mean
indirect
chapter 5?
chapter 6. No, the
Oh,
her
yeah,
when
there
she's
was
trying to get
quite a few
away.
moments where she did fake
Oh,
sneezes.
oh, the one where she's it's the one where
At
she's
Chatoro's home?
yeah, and she's trying to make up an excuse as to why she can't stay the night.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been chapter 6.
Yeah. Uh, it's a really tiny detail, but it provides a wealth of indirect characterization for both Joshi and Chitoro. It's showing how much each person understands the other. Like it shows, like they like Joshi seems to display a higher level of understanding of Chitoro here than Chitoro does of Joshi because Joshi's able to sort of play on her emotions a little bit more, and Chitoro kind of falls for a little bit. Um, and it also shows how much they care for the other person, like especially Chitoro caring for Joshi, that she's
Mm.
not noticing that kind of thing.
Well, in the same vein, like, if you just became a vampire, well, how would you get out of the situation? Would you tell the other person you were a vampire, or would it be better for them not to know?
Yeah, and that is the question plaguing Joshi and the story for most of the run, which and I like that I
Mm.
really like that it is kind of how do I describe it?
That it's the journey throughout of she's having to deal with this, that it's not a simple, uh, oh, something's wrong, we gotta figure it out just right now. Because
well
obviously at this point, Joshi just has no idea about the world around her. She's still trying to figure things out, and so she
yeah.
doesn't even know it's a good idea to let the one person she cares about most in the world in on what's going on.
Yeah, I mean it kind she kind of is trying to figure it out right now, but the thing I like about it is that she's figuring it out on her own. Like she's trying to
Mm,
figure, but she's not finding the answers, and like she has to struggle to figure out anything up until chapter 12.
mm,
Um, that's what I like. Is like you're mulling over this question. You're really you're working through every aspect of it, slowly breaking it down, like what it means to be a vampire in this world, and
mm,
how Joshi's life is changing, how it's affecting everything around it. All these little pieces of info about like what it actually means to be a vampire are slowly coming together to form this answer. And it's not all given at once, or it's not
mm.
it's feels like a very realistic um uh, uh, uh
Take on the situation if you weren't given any
like
guidance.
like a line of logic. I can't remember what the exact phrase is, but like
Hmm.
it that through line of logic of her
What would
discovering
you?
these things makes sense.
Mhm.
That's what I really like.
Yeah, what abilities would be reasonable to just you're able to figure out on your own?
Well, even
Because
just
like even with our previous discussion about in chapter 2, would Joshi have even dared if she realized she was a vampire sooner?
mhm,
What stuff would she even try and test out?
yeah,
What are some things that would make sense that you would get if you became a vampire and such?
yeah. Well, speaking of the abilities, real quick, there was one that was described as walking alongside walls, and I had to laugh a little bit because I understood what you were what the ability actually was, but just reading it made it seem like you're just walking next to a wall. You're just walking next to a wall. You're walking alongside it. I was just thinking, like, well, that's not really much of an ability since basically every person on the planet can walk alongside a wall, but it's walking on walls. Yeah, that's that. I understood that.
Mm.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, there was something else. Whatever. Is the festival that Joshi and Chitoru attend for anything specific, or is it just like a festival to have a festival?
It's mostly just a summer festival, a summer festival, which is commonly just called a matsuri in Japanese. Just
Okay.
summertime celebration.
Okay. So they're celebrating summer. All right.
Mm.
Hmm. Chapter 7 mentions that the festival is a break from their school routines and furthering their trades. What are Joshi and Chitoru going to school for? Like, what do they aim to be when they've graduated? Or at least did aim for in Joshi's case?
Uh, Music for the most part. Just building connections and such in Joshi's case. Or yeah, she's already got her band, but in the same vein, sometimes you go to post secondary to help further that type of education and just get more connections.
Hmm.
And then Chatoru is more for engineering, robotics, that kind of stuff.
Ah, okay. That would explain her job. Okay. Eh, And that's something I'm going to ask about in just a minute. But is Chitoro still living her normal life at the end, or is she leaving that all behind in favor of vampirism? Like, is she still going to college? Like, is she? How far is she diving into this new world with Joshi?
Well, with the bonus chapter in chapter 13, it gives the semblance of Chatoru is still living a somewhat normal life. Obviously, with um, just at this point now knowing what Joshi really is,
Yeah. Okay.
and especially within vampire society, you do want those people who can protect you while you're asleep, just because, yeah, you're really vulnerable when you're in torpor.
Yeah. There's the part with Joshi attacking Chitoro when she's interrupted from resting at the end, which is
Mm.
it seems like she could defend herself pretty well, but in a very frenzied way. So it makes sense.
Well, part of that being that it was still during the nighttime, and she had a
Yeah.
little bit of blood to help regenerate.
Yeah. Okay. So Chitoro has a job as an engineer. What
Mhm.
we see, it's shown that she's soldering something for a board. What is she actually responsible for? Like, what are her job responsibilities?
Mainly just try and invent products for a customer, whether if it's just helping assemble a prototype or just do something on her own to help build something for a client.
So is this like a what kind of company is that then? Is there like are there like specialized robotics companies that do that kind of thing?
It could be. I just left it intentionally vague just so that the reader could uh, add on to that detail what they think uh, Chatoru would be doing.
Okay. Well, I'm asking you definitive questions now, so you need to give me them answers.
That's
Just
the
kidding.
definitive answer. It's left vague.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just kidding. Um, how did she end up in this engineering job? Did she like find a fly? These are very mundane questions, I know, but it's just stuff I'm curious
Mhm.
about.
The story implication is that Chatoru took aspects, well, this part not fully being in the story, but she took after her mother and decided to
Oh,
become an engineer.
okay.
Her mother just being more so decent with computers and such, which got a young Chotoro to be more curious about, well, how does a computer work? What makes it operate and such?
Yeah.
And so it's what got her into just engineering in general and then robotics just so that she can build her own things.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a really nice piece of characterization. I do wish that it made it into the story because that is perfectly realistic because kids will take after what their parents show an interest in if their parents are loving parents. So, yeah, I like that a lot.
Mhm.
Okay. So, I
And
have
now just trying to put that into the story, just trying to figure out how to incorporate it without it being forced in just because her parents have only really been made mentioned just a few times throughout the story.
yeah, and the one time that they do come up does feel like it kinda comes out of nowhere because there is no um there's not really much of a in the way of talking about her parents. I do really like that moment, but it does
Mhm.
feel a little out of place. Um,
So chapter 13, I'm guessing,
the
or was it
moment
the earlier mention?
the moment of focusing on Chatoru and her possibly hearing her mom's voice from beyond is it is really nice,
Mm.
but it is also it feels like the conclusion of something that didn't have enough build up, I guess.
Well, in the same vein, just how fickle lives can be, that not everything is necessarily explained if you just took one brief moment.
Absolutely.
Especially where at that point, Chataro's really concerned just how will her herself and Joshi continue their lives.
Yeah.
What will happen when her twin brother and his girlfriend come back from touring? How are they gonna deal with things? And just those memories just coming to the forefront of how would that situation have played differently if her parents were still around.
Mhm. Well, and so with Joshi and Shatoru trying to figure out how to make their lives work. There's one major criticism I do have of the story. uh,
Hmm.
But the two of them already having extremely strong feelings for each other is a major aspect of the plot. But the only
Hmm.
detail readers receive about their history is Joshi giving a very truncated version of the reason they met in the first place. And since this is an alternate timeline, and as we discussed a little bit before, um, it I'm viewing these characters on their own and separate from any characterization that exists in anything else.
Hmm.
And so, without any legitimate context or justification for their feelings, it came across to me as a little contrived. Like Joshi and Chatura are programmed to love each other purely to serve the plot rather than two people having legitimately fallen for each other. If they had had some kind of actual fight or conflict that like between each other, then it would feel more real. But because they're so thankful to each other all the time and don't run into any issues between themselves other than the external factor of Joshi's vampirism, their love comes across to me as at least partially artificial. It's the same issue that I found after reading Aurora Protocol by Hans and Shadow. The novel itself was a great read, but there was never any real interpersonal conflict between Tori and Natalia.
Mm, yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, I really there's I guess there's a couple of things that kind of go along with that, but sort of I really like that Joshi reveals herself to her bandmates. It is such a cliche for characters experiencing burdens like this to hide it away and never share anything, no matter how much it strains them.
Mm.
Like basically every single comic book to ever exist. uh, so having this is very fresh, but it is juxtaposed with immediate conflict and tension nullification, with all of the band members automatically accepting Joshi and this ancient vampire, Lady Ryuk. So that was a little disappointing. Like, oh, the tension. I would look forward to these kind of confrontations between characters, and then it's just and then it's what's the phrase? I guess I'll have to go with a different one. The air's taken out of it. Really rap. I don't have enough time to enjoy it.
Not having that proper rising climax.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. The rising action is. I want more rising action. uh, and I figured
Well,
Chitoro.
in the same vein, I still want to play that real life factor of, especially with Joshi with her bandmates, just how much vampires have been ingrained into our culture of this fantasy just out there. How many people nowadays would just be like, "Oh, cool! What do you actually have?" Where initially you would be fearing like, "Oh, they're just gonna be afraid of me. They're gonna automatically just hate me." Blah 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 blah. And sometimes that the reality of the situation is different than what you perceive might happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I I know if I ran into an actual vampire, I'd probably be pretty scared. Like if it was someone
In
close to
fairness,
me,
it's
I'd
how they would bring it up to you.
yeah. I mean, if I'd I mean, it is I do like that she has people to it is a very nice take on uh like that alter ego cliche thing that I
Mm,
mentioned. I just wish there was just a little bit more pushback from the characters before they accept it. I figured like Chitoro would find out about Joshi's vampirism at some point, and I
mm.
was looking forward to seeing how that would play out. And I really like that she finds out before Joshi is ready to tell her, and it's feeling like it's building up to a big climactic confrontation, but that it ends up feeling wasted because Chitoro automatically accepts Joshi being a vampire, and nothing she sees or experiences changes her mind even slightly, like being attacked by Joshi at the end to the point where she's screaming for her life. I feel like at that point she might have something to say about it, but no. It,
Well, in the same vein, like especially in Chatoro's case, her someone that she was girlfriends with, someone that she considered to be friends with for 6, 7 months, just disappeared for over a month afterwards.
yeah.
And so there is a little bit of that conflict of what did she do wrong? Uh is this fully on Joshi? How is her feelings for her? Especially when you have how many different relationships that no matter how much bad things someone does to someone, how much they would still want to get with them, even though they know uh, it's not necessarily for the best.
Hmm.
But in the same vein, like in this case, like Chotoro just finding out um that Joshi was a vampire and just like, okay, now everything's starting to click together. No
Hmm.
wonder she couldn't say what she was. She couldn't say what was bothering her and such.
Yeah. I guess the yeah, that does make sense. But then I also think like Chitoro is just a normal girl, as you said, and so if this really is based in real life with vampires added in, then she wouldn't have her reaction, and I guess really the reactions of everyone that Josie reveals it to feel like these people are already have a good amount of familiarity with the occult and like actually experiencing these like, vampire like being they have plenty of experience like actually dealing with vampires because like, it's one thing to read about them and see them in movies and like play them as video games, but it's another thing entirely to actually have an interaction with a real life vampire. Like that is a wholly different scale.
But in the same vein, like again, it's how it's brought up.
Yeah,
When Joshi brought it up to her bandmates, like she was at her breaking point. If she wasn't there, she wouldn't have said anything,
yeah,
just because of that fear of would they hate me if I said something?
yeah, and
And
that's
then in
yeah,
Chataro's case, like again, like she was at her lowest point. Like this was the last thing she wanted Chatoro to find out,
yeah,
just because of all the fears and whatnot she had about just even the thoughts she had and the worries of what she might do to Chatoru.
yeah,
Like
yeah. That makes
if
sense.
if
Absolutely.
um if Joshi approached it in a different way of she was trying to manipulate her and just trying to get some blood, and she one day it just stopped and saw her for the monster. Like clearly with how it was even brought up, you can tell that Joshi doesn't want to be the monster.
Yeah. I mean, Josie,
That she's really battling that beast within herself.
I mean, Chatora did find her in the middle of kind of a pretty bloody beatdown. I don't know. I don't know. I guess it's a matter of I don't know different perspectives or I'm not sure. It just doesn't quite work for me. I like what you did, but I wish there had been a little bit
Fair enough.
more conflict before acceptance. Like yeah. Uh Basically, while there is technically some kind of interpersonal conflict in the form of Joshi's vampirism, it ultimately doesn't come across as really mattering to me because every single person around Joshi automatically accepts it, and it feels like it robs of the scenes it's relevant in of any tension or intrigue. Um, that is there. I guess that kind of yeah. I was about to. Yeah, all right. Joshi asking if the Bible is real makes me laugh. I know that she's asking about the events it details, but I immediately thought of her asking if the book itself was real. Like that was yeah, that was I guess a moment of unintentional comedy.
well, well, in that case, like you hear that Cain from the Cain and Abel stories, you hear that he's allegedly real, and so it's like, oh my god, is the Bible actually real?
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure in the moment I would completely be going along with that. And I understood what she was going for, but being on the outside looking in, I also thought of like is she's asking if the book itself. So it was kind of funny to me. Yeah, so
Which a little bit of part of that is I also included a little bit more details in the Forsaken chapter, just kind of giving more kind of what Joshi's upbringing was. That she
mhm,
was Christian.
okay.
That oh, just that sudden realization of oh fuck, is the judgmental God of the Bible actually real?
Yeah. And I guess I don't know if it
Aside from being a vampire, am I being damned to hell for being gay?
right, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it fully comes across as her being Christian in New Life, but it does seem like she has at least a decent level of
Not in the
familiarity
mainline
with the
stories,
contents.
anyways.
Yeah. Like she has an understanding of it. So she clearly had some exposure to it before. So yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Now chapter 12. I have to be honest, it was very hard to get through with how much information was laid out in rapid succession. There were 10 chapters
Yeah,
of
that was
Joshi being a vampire and not knowing anything, and I thought it was really good because you were slowly putting the pieces together of a puzzle that feels like it should take a very long time to figure out. And then chapter 12 comes and suddenly I'm awash in a sea of info, like a video game tutorial explaining mechanics at the beginning that won't show up until much later on. So it is hard to retain it all.
That's that's very fair. That was a very big concern of mine of just this information would be relevant to Joshi, but how interesting would it be to the reader? I personally had so much fun writing the back and forth between Joshi and Ryuk. Just how does Ryuk view the other clans and whatnot? What
Hmm.
are Joshi's kind of initial thoughts of what these clans are?
Yeah.
But yeah, in the same vein, like it makes sense that this is stuff for Joshi to know. But in the same vein, like, do you just wash away all that detail and just go, Ryuk explains the different clans to her.
Yeah, or as like or as Joshi's being sent out on missions, she's briefed on the type of enemy she's going to come up against, and then uh
Mm.
it I guess it's a little more digestible sizes of
Which,
information because then
yes,
you can give a little
that
blurb
is
about.
very fair.
But then New Life would have probably gone for another 20 chapters.
Yeah, exactly. Where that would have been the big moment of do does it take even longer to finish that original idea,
Yeah.
or do you just stop it and just not even get much detail?
Hmm. Yeah. And so why does Lady Ryuk decide to suddenly offer all these answers to Joshi after keeping her in the dark for a while?
Mainly because Joshi didn't wake up when she was supposed to during the second chapter.
Okay.
That was purely the reason where uh with her response of how would you actually feel if you woke up when you actually woke up that there's just this stranger in your house.
Okay. So then
And
why
especially for Lady Ryuk, she has a pretty nice place to get back to and other responsibilities she has to handle.
okay. So then why does she wait, like I guess how much time actually passes between Joshi turning and the end of the story?
Uh Roughly a little over a month.
Okay. All right. And it does make sense that I like that she's sort of like it she Lady Rook leaves Joshi on her own to discover some things to figure it out for herself for a little bit. It makes it definitely gets across that these vampire clans are sort of trial by fire and sort of
Mm.
vicious in a way, ruthless, sort of Spartan.
Oh,
Um,
especially if you go through the older lore for the Banu Hakim, or as they were known as before, the Assamites. They were cutthroat ruthless. If you disobey your sire, just off with your head, you are done.
hmm. Doesn't seem like the most effective method of of maintaining an order through the ages to me, but that's not my order, so
Well,
I'm not telling them how to run it.
in the in the same vein, these are the clan of assassins. They want to make
Yeah,
sure you get it done.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can understand that. uh, so I guess is it sort of just like a trial period that month for Joshi?
Very much where, uh, like how chapter 9 explains it, Ryuk was ready to have that meeting with her just after that week to
Hmm.
see how she navigates things. But seeing just how broken Joshi was at that point, Ryuk's like, okay, I have to see how she actually responds
Hmm.
to how this is. Like, this is the make or break if she's even worthy to stay alive.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I did kind of have that in mind, but actually hearing it fully laid out, that helps me place it into context a lot better. Okay.
Mhm. And sometimes that's the difficulty of being a writer. You have all the ideas, but did you convey it enough?
Exactly. Oh yeah, fully understand that. Yeah. So, I mean, Lady Rook definitely is a very understanding vampire. Then,
She's definitely very lenient compared to other elders
yeah,
within vampire society.
kind of makes me wonder what they're like. If we get something for another sire and their child. So
Yeah, definitely no technology, that kind of stuff.
yeah,
Unless you're a Nosferatu.
it. I'll yeah. Sorry. So is all that exposition about the different vampire clans directly from Vampire the Masquerade, or is that like where does all that
Yes,
come from? Okay,
all 14 are from Vampire the Masquerade.
I knew there were a lot, but
Those are the
14. Oh man, there's
technically 13 just because of the situation with the Salubri that they almost went extinct,
uh huh.
but technically it's the 14 clans.
Okay. Uh, is is all of that? Did you put all that at the end as setup for a sequel? It The ending definitely feels like a sequel is in the works, and if it is, it would make that all that exposition a lot more digestible, especially since it's given very close to the end. Because then we'd have the first story, and then whatever the sequel or follow up is as Joshi's at full life as a vampire.
Mm, well, I might as well unveil it now that yeah, I am working on future new life content.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
Might still take a little bit just because I'm doing some research for this upcoming story.
Yeah. Okay. So coming away from the ending, New Life feels like a story of two halves put together. One about a woman being unwillingly brought into a dark new world, and one about a woman trying to find happiness with a love interest. For the most part, I think the two work well
Mm,
together, but honestly, the wedgies do feel very out of place to me. The overall tone of the story is brooding and dark, emotional turmoil and heartache. But anytime wedgies are brought into the picture, that feeling changes in an abrupt way from my perspective. I think I think the story would work better without any wedgies because while 90% of the lore for vampires in this universe is delivered in one fell swoop, it is still pretty interesting. Like, I'm interested to see how it develops. Like any wedgie that happens sort of feels like it had to happen because it's a story for the wedgie community. So you can't not include any wedgies rather than it feeling like a natural part of the world and
mm,
characters. That's my perspective.
the the main thing I would just push back on is that it's a life of a wedgie fetishist. That Joshi it does have the fetish, and it's how often does wedgies come up? How much is she thinking about it and such?
Yeah.
And it being convenient ways to get out of that dark introspection of her new reality.
Mm. I guess that is sort of the
That just
context.
because you
Yeah.
become a monster doesn't mean that you have to fully forsake a normal life.
Yeah. Okay. I guess that is sort of the context you need to think of it in. But when I'm reading it, I can't help but view Joshi as a person who has been turned into a vampire, and then occasionally she'll remember that she's into wedgies, as opposed to it being like an actual fetish for her. It feels more like one later on because the wedgies are a lot more integrated, but I guess because they're so sparse, it feels like they're more of an afterthought as opposed to really being necessary to the story, I suppose.
Well, in fairness, this was the kind of the first time where all of the chapters in a longer running series all included a chapter somewhere within each chapter. So that just might be it, or it's just completely just how my style is that just because you have the fetish doesn't necessarily mean you're always thinking about it all the time, or it comes in moments that you're not fully wanting to be a dom or sub, but when those moments arise, it can feel out of place just
Yeah.
because it's at a moment's notice.
So I guess in the sequel, if I can make a request, to make wedgies just a little bit more relevant, because I feel like this story will work so much better with like the things that I didn't quite work for me with, if it's part of a larger narrative instead of just standing on its own. I guess the things I brought up feel like setup to something else as opposed to being sort of resolved, or um getting to a place of some kind of finality, I suppose. So,
Okay.
looking forward to the sequel then.
We shall see if what I have planned or what I might come up with will address that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be that like wedgies become the central aspect of the story and everybody's thinking about them all the time, but just a little bit more relevant.
Fair enough. Which again, it just might be part of my writing style that I do like dark fantasy, and that is
Mhm.
kind of part of it. Of not everything is so dark, but in the same vein, it's not always sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah, absolutely.
That it has that real life aspect with some fantastical moments that occur throughout.
Yeah. I guess this sort of showed me a potential of what you could do if you decided to write a story without wedgies. And it was see it
Mm.
I was very interested in that. So maybe if you're interested in doing something like that, that could be something to try. I feel like it would work
So I
very
do have
well.
a perhaps I do have a future in just writing non fetish material.
Yeah, I think if you were to try it, I don't see why not.
Time will only tell.
Yeah. So what were your inspirations for this story? It seems like Flame Over Darkness was kind of one. Vampire the Masquerade. Were
Mm.
there any others?
Those two were kind of the main ones,
Okay.
or at least Flame Over Darkness. It helped inspire
Yeah.
just the other vampire related fetish content that's out there.
Hmm. Okay.
Um,
I mean, there is.
Even though I haven't delved too much into it, Call of the Night, for the brief little bits and stuff that I saw of that series, that might have kind of played into just kind of that modern day vampire living in a modern society.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, there is arc times wedgie vampire, but doesn't seem like that really makes sense for the universe you're creating.
Mm.
All right. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to discuss?
Uh, Seems like we covered mostly everything, but yeah, just confirming that now I am officially working on new content. I have some new material written out, and then unfortunately, that's gonna have to be put on the back burner while I work on the first extra episode for New Life.
Okay. Yeah, there's a question then. What is the difference between the bonus chapters that you do and the extra episodes that you do?
The bonus chapter, or how I usually categorize it, is that you have the normal chapters that they're pushing the main plot along.
Uh-huh.
Bonus chapters just being something that adds something a little bit more, but doesn't necessarily push the plot along. And then extra episodes usually just being larger, like its own its own story that's part of the greater whole. But it's not. It's way bigger than just a single chapter.
Okay.
Like the material I currently have written out, I do fear that it's gonna get to the length of chapter 12, but it's one big, its own separate story.
Okay.
That it's just way too long for a single chapter.
Okay. All right. All right. That's good to know. All right. Well,
That
is
might help explain just how Tales of the Wasteland was written.
yeah.
Too long for a single chapter, but it was just right enough for the type of story that it was.
Oh, so okay. All right. Well, is there anything that you like to promote from yourself or others?
Um, if people want to check out my profile, it's just ChaosReacon. I have a Twitter, so if you want to get semi updates, I'm trying to be a little bit more extroverted on there, which for an introvert like me, that's pretty hard. But the only other thing I would like to promote is if you really enjoy content creators' work, leave them a comment.
Yeah. Yes. I fully stand behind that as well. Oh, very nice.
Otherwise, if people haven't checked it out yet, Aurora Protocol, it's all the chapters are getting close to being fully released for free. Otherwise, it was like what $10
Yeah.
US
Yeah.
for the book, and so yeah, $10 for the PDF and the exclusive images that were part of that, which Shadow and Hans commissioned me for one of the pieces.
Yeah, there's some good stuff there. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was good to finally discuss the entirety of New Life. I don't know if there's
Was
anything.
definitely worried. Was
Uh,
definitely worried when I released the final chapter if just how obvious it was that it was the last chapter for quote unquote that part of the series.
yeah, it's I wasn't quite sure because I waited for a little bit. I saw that there wasn't anything, and then there was a bonus, and there was a extra or a Forsaken chapter. I saw that you extended it, and then Forsaken chapters. Yeah,
Well,
it was a little
with
hard to.
with the Forsaken chapter, that one was just purely on the spot. Like I had no prior planning for it. It pretty much came about um, that I was just in a dark place, and it was just something to uh, help
Yeah,
explain just partially how I was feeling.
yeah, okay. So maybe it can be called the
It's not a
Forgotten
completely happy
chapters.
chapter, but still gives a little bit more detail into the New Life universe, or at least
Yeah,
for Joshi in particular.
yeah. Joshi definitely feels like the main character for sure. Uh, Well, if there is anything that you'd like to hear me discuss, or if you'd like to come on for an episode, leave a comment or send me a message on DeviantArt, Lucky Fetish, or Discord as NeufAtora. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Best Book Club.